All right,
That's good. All right, let's do this. Our first topic tonight, guys, is going to be examining the growth of the spiritual, but not religious. Drew, have at it.
Yes, spiritual but not religious. So many Americans describe their belief system this way that pollsters now give the phrase its own category on questionnaires. In the 2012 survey by the Pew Religion and Public Life Project, nearly a fifth of those polled said that they were not religiously affiliated, and nearly 37% of that group said that they were spiritual but not religious. It was 7% of all Americans, a bigger group than atheists and way bigger than Jews, Muslims, or Episcopalians. Unsurprisingly, the SBNR, as this group is often called, are attracting a lot of attention. 4 recent books offer perspectives on these Americans who seem to want some connection to the divine, but who don't want to feel affiliated with traditional religion. There's the minister who wants to woo them, the scholars who want to understand them, and the psychotherapists who want to help them. The Reverend Lillian Daniels' book, When Spiritual But Not Religious Is Not Enough, began as a short essay in the Huffington Post in which she voiced her exasperation with the predictability that she found in spiritual but not religious people. On airplanes, Ms. Daniel wrote in the essay in 2011, I dread the conversation with the person who finds out that I'm a minister and wants to use the flight time to explain to me that he is spiritual but not religious. Such a person will always share this as if it is some kind of daring insight, unique to him, bold in its rebellion against the religious status quo. Before you know it, he's telling me that he finds God in the sunsets. These people always find God in the sunsets, Miss Daniels said, and walks on the beach. Being privately spiritual but not religious doesn't interest me, she writes. There is nothing challenging about having deep thoughts by oneself. What is interesting is doing this work in the community, where other people might call you on stuff or, heaven forbid, disagree with you. Where life with God gets rich and provocative is where you dig into tradition that you did not invent all for yourself. So is spiritual solitary or communal? It is theologically engaged or just focused on nature and gratitude, as Ms. Daniel worries. To judge from A Religion to One's Own, a guide to creating a personal spirituality in the secular world, by Thomas More, which Care of the Soul is one of the best-selling self-help books ever. Spirituality can be whatever one makes it. In his guide to developing the custom spirituality, he encourages people to draw on religion, anti-religion, or whatever works for them. Every day I add another piece to the religion that is my own, Dr. Moore writes. It's built on years of meditation, chanting, theological study, and the practice of therapy. To me, a sacred activity. At the very least, we might conclude that spiritual but not religious isn't necessarily vague or wishy-washy. It is not nothing, although it may risk being everything.
Thank you, Drew, for that. Who wants to go first on this? TJ? Drew? Drew, you might as well, since you just got done reading it.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I was going to say I've got a few ideas on this that I think might actually get us started. So their definition of spiritual, exactly what is that? Is that just like an energy? Is it beauty? Is it like inner peace? Because we can give, words to this that don't require this like spirit, this made up idea. And if you want to blend it all together and call that like spiritual, like energy, beauty, inner peace, understanding that you're just a small part of a big working mechanism, blah, 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 blah. If that's what you want to call spiritual, then that to me is totally different than spiritual as in like, I can feel
divinity,
the God, and I can feel the higher power. Like those are two very different things. And it made me think about, there's people like, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. It made me think of a video I did a while back in response to a guy who said he hated religion but loved Jesus. You remember that?
Of course,
the rapping guy.
Yeah. So people can say they hate religion but love a part of that religion, and spirituality, I think, comes from religion. Now, I'm no expert. I think most people today in our current world would find themselves to be more spiritual the more religious they are. you would find people claiming to be less spiritual the less religious they are. I think it would be a very easy graph to make. And so I really do think spirituality is tied to religion in some way.
Well, I think it is. It's to a certain point, because I think the stepping stone in that process is religion first. You're indoctrinated. You come to, Jesus Christ. You come to Christianity. I'm just going to pick Christianity for now. It's an evolution of getting away from religion, I think, and we've talked about this a lot on the show, where they're making steps as progress. These, I would say, the entry levels of deconverting, people are like, well, I still love Jesus, I accept Jesus, I like the works that he done in the New Testament, even though he was still an evil person. They take the good snippets, they make it their own little thing, and now society is we're starting to attack the religious. You got social media outlets question the devout religious out there, and they're becoming more extreme in their views. So you got these moderate Christians say, yeah, you know what, I'm spiritual now. Yeah, I don't like religion, but yeah, I'm spiritual now. And I think, Drew, I think you want to touch on spirituality too, also definitions. I thank you, right?
Yeah. I was just going to say, first off, that I really do kind of adhere to anybody that's familiar with the atheist experience with Matt Dillahunty. He says this a lot because a lot of the callers come in and they usually give that kind of thing. I kind of take his position on spirituality because, just like TJ said, what the fuck does that really mean? Because so many people, everybody that I've ever met that claims himself to be spiritual, mean like completely different things. And one of the definitions I found for the word spiritual says, of or pertaining to the spirit or soul as distinguished from the physical nature. And if it's distinguished from physical nature, that definition really is implying something metaphysical. So in that sense, the term spiritual has no use for me whatsoever. But if you mean it like, Joe, we've talked about this in live shows, like if, you're out on the beach looking at a sunset or something like that, and you get like, man, isn't the universe awesome? Any of that. If you're watching Cosmos and you're just like, dude, isn't it fucking awesome that we exist, and all those kinds of things. In that sense, some people would consider that spiritual.
No, you're 100% right, and I'll expand on that a little bit. I'll let Paul go here. It's like, when it comes to this being spiritual, I don't see it in the divine sense or divinity or anything like that. It's like, when I'm in a boat and I'm fishing, I'll look at, the wildlife, stuff like that, the birds, the heron. When I'm in the woods, I'm walking the woods, I see stuff and I'm just like, this is awesome. When I look up into space, I wonder what's out there, the possibilities. That, I think that's being spiritual. You know what I mean? Okay. It has no dogma, no religious sense to it. And it's just me, I just feel one with nature, I think,
Do you think nature feels the spirit too, though? Like when you're out there fishing, do you think the fish that you catch have a spirit?
No.
They're not spiritual in any way, so it's only something reserved for people who could conceive something such as a spirit.
Advanced consciousness, advanced consciousness,
Yeah, consciousness would probably play a
if you can think that you, basically, if you think you can have a spirit, you can. Like that's pretty much putting it on level with
good point
with where it's at. I mean,
good point.
Yeah.
Paul.
I think when people get away, they're trying to get away from the bad baggage that comes along with being in religion now. So they move on to this vague thing where I'm spiritual, but they won't actually pin down a definition. It's this globulous feeling for most people. That's what spiritual is, or following the teachings and believing it somehow, but it's not really defined what spiritual is supposed to be. So I think people are trying to use it just to escape the negativity because of all the attacks on the stupid stuff that religion does, especially in this country. So they use this as a way to kind of escape from that, but they're not really moving on. They're still clinging to superstition and still clinging to illogical crap. So it's a good step, sorta, but they're just shifting from, I used to be in an organized religion, so now I have just this belief in it, but I don't follow what the preachers say, but I still believe in it, even though there's no real reason to, and I won't look into it and start using logic, which would help further it, but they just go spiritual because they still feel it in their heart, even if they don't have to listen to the preacher.
It seems to me like logic and spirituality don't have a lot in common. Spirituality is something you can just make up and then assign whatever you want to it. Whereas logic is not something you just play with like that.
And since it's not defined well, it can be anything. It's when religious people use it, like the Christian use it, it's that feeling connected with the divinity. When Joe uses it, it's feeling with nature. When people use, like humanists use it, they probably use feeling with nature. But the problem is people, just like the word theory, they don't really know what it means in certain contexts, and they go, "Oh, you're spiritual? It means you believe in something higher." No, dick. It doesn't necessarily mean that.
It's a good point,
just like the word skeptic, actually.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
When you think about it, yeah. And it's pretty amazing. Like 37% of that group say they were spiritual and not religious.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's just amazing. It's mind-boggling when you think about that statistic, you know?
Yeah.
But this is a Christian nation. So
with those people, it's like only 1 in 5 actually go to church.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Because if I can, I just want to say it's still a big improvement from considering yourself religious, because most people that would consider themselves religious are tied down to particular dogmas and things like that. And so it is a step in the right direction, but